let's get weird. So, this is a story that I mentioned in passing last night in the comments in response to someone else's personal story. And this is a story my dad told me from when he was younger. Everybody lost their mind when they read that comment and was like, story time, story time, story time. Again, this was a story that my dad told me when I was a kid, so I couldn't remember the details. My dad is old. He goes to bed at 8 p.m. on the dot. So I couldn't remember enough to make a story time until this morning. He just called me. He's getting ready to go to work. And he told me the story, so here we go. The one detail he left out in this story was how old he was when this happened, but I know he was young. He was probably preteen. And he and his friend were out ginsenging. They were up in the hills. And he said they walked for about an hour. So I would assume, close to a couple miles. And he said they get out in the middle of the woods and there's this big clearing and they can see car hoods. And it looked like they had took the part that meets the windshield where it kind of scoops in. And they had stuck them into the ground and it made a big circle. He said when they walked up to it, it was a complete circle of the car hoods. And on top was the remnants of a tarp. He said that it looked like they had put the car hoods like that and made kind of like a shelter and then put a tarp on top. But it had been so long, the tarp had rotted off, so it was just kind of pieces of it everywhere. They get over to it, they look down into it, and there is a complete human skeleton laying there. There are no clothes, there are no shoes, there is nothing but the skeleton, and it's missing its head. So they start to freak out, they start running, don't know what direction they're running in, so they start running a different direction, and upon running in the direction they were going to, they find the head that was on a stake a couple of football fields away. So they continue freaking out. They run and they end up coming out on a road that's called Red Dog Road. They end up going home, telling their parents, calling the cops. The cops come out and make them go back to Red Dog Road and make them walk back into the woods where they had been or where they thought they had been. They get up there and the police chief is standing there with them with his hand on his pew-pew the whole time. And Dad said you could see like there was genuine concern, genuine fear. They collected all of the evidence. They collected the car parts. They collected everything, cleaned it up. And he said that as far as he knows, he was told that it was probably in connection to the KKK, to the Klan. And that was the only explanation that they ever got. I don't know much about the KKK. I've never really looked into it. I know it's a real thing. I know it was prominent in West Virginia and Kentucky. But I've never heard of them doing that sort of thing as a practice. So it makes me wonder if it truly was something like that or if it was something about maybe people who live in the mountains and they was an outsider and they didn't, I don't know. But you also have things like the old witches that lived in the woods, and there's so many stories that come out of these woods that honestly, you don't know what's going on. My father is in full support of me doing these stories. He said he has a ton of stories, as well as his friends, his cousins, my mom, my grandparents. So I have stories like this for days of just weird things that have happened in these mountains.